Deep in the industrial heart of Victorian London, where the Thames meets steel and steam, Baker Street slumbers under a suffocating blanket of fog. But tonight, something cuts through the silence, like a blade through velvet. The midnight whistle of the Harrogate steamworks, a mechanical cry that has marked the changing of shifts for 20 years without fail. Yet as the metallic shriek pierces the darkness, another sound follows. A human scream, muffled but unmistakable, swallowed by the rain-slicked brick and coal smoke that chokes these narrow streets. Sherlock Holmes stands at his window, pocket watch in hand, measuring the precise interval between whistle and echo. His keen gray eyes track the steam rising from the factory district, calculating wind patterns and acoustic trajectories with the methodical precision of a scientist. Watson, roused from his evening reading, joins him at the glass, but Holmes raises a single finger for silence. Something is wrong with the mathematics of sound tonight. The whistle should last exactly 4 3/4 seconds. Holmes has timed it countless evenings from his perch above London's sprawling maze. But tonight, it lingers. A ghost note hovers in the air, defying the mechanical precision of the Harrogate works, extending beyond what physics should allow. In that impossible extra half-second, someone screamed. Someone who should not have been heard above the industrial roar. Before you settle in for this gripping tale of deduction and danger, make sure you're subscribed to witness every twist and revelation as we unravel one of Holmes's most challenging cases. The game, as they say, is afoot, and tonight's mystery will take us deep into the heart of industrial London, where human ambition collides with mechanical precision. As Holmes reaches for his coat and deerstalker hat, a message arrives by street courier, hastily scrawled on factory letterhead, bearing traces of graphite that don't match the sender's claimed profession. The letter trembles in the gaslight, marked with the desperate handwriting of someone who has witnessed something impossible. The midnight whistle has sounded its alarm, but not in the way its creators intended. Tonight we follow the greatest detective of all time into a labyrinth of steam, steel, and deadly secrets where nothing is as it seems, and the truth lies hidden in the precise measurement of sound and shadow. The hansom cab deposits Holmes and Watson at the gates of the Harrogate steamworks as the morning shift bell clangs through the industrial quarter. The factory squats like an iron beast against the Thames, its twin smokestacks breathing black clouds into the gray London dawn. Here, in this maze of pipes and pulleys, someone has committed a crime so subtle that only the greatest detective mind could perceive its intricate design. Their client awaits them in the cramped timekeeper's office, Lionel Grieve, a thin man whose hands shake with the tremors of someone who has spent 20 years listening to the rhythm of machinery. His most prized possession, an antique fob watch, sits on his desk, and Watson notices that Grieve adjusts it 4 times during their brief conversation. The timekeeper speaks in the measured cadence of someone accustomed to precision, yet his story defies the very laws of mechanical accuracy he has devoted his life to upholding. Holmes learns that Grieve maintains the factory's timing logs with obsessive care, recording every whistle blast to the fraction of a second. But the entry for last night's midnight signal contains an impossibility. The whistle lasted 5 1/4 seconds, precisely half a second longer than the steam pressure should allow. More troubling still, Grieve's instruments recorded no mechanical failure, no drop in boiler pressure, no irregularity in the timing mechanism itself. Their investigation leads them first to Miriam Vale, the factory's safety steward, a woman whose burn-scarred hands tell the story of industrial accidents she has fought to prevent. She carries herself with the rigid determination of someone waging a personal war against the dangerous conditions that plague night shift workers. When Holmes questions her about the extended whistle, she pauses mid-syllable before answering, her fingers unconsciously tracing the scars that mark her dedication to worker safety. Vale has been campaigning against night shifts, citing the dangerous blind spots and inadequate lighting that turn the factory floor into a death trap after dark. The factory's geography reveals itself as a complex chessboard under the harsh glare of industrial lighting. The whistle tower dominates the central yard, its iron catwalk accessible only by a narrow ladder that sways with each gust of Thames wind. Below, the boiler house squats like a brick fortress, its blind side facing an alley that connects to Regent Wharf. The missing grate on the catwalk presents a treacherous gap that could send an unwary climber plummeting to the yard below. Isaac Quell, the night stoker, emerges from the depths of the boiler house like a specter from the underworld. Coal dust blackens his face and clothes, and he speaks in the soft whisper of someone who has learned to make himself heard above the roar of furnaces. When nervous, Quell counts his breaths, a habit Holmes notes with particular interest. The stoker carries a small brass tube as a talisman, a finger-length piece of industrial scrap that he claims brings luck during the dangerous night shifts. Inspector Bradshaw represents Scotland Yard's interest in maintaining order among the increasingly restless factory workers. A practical man who distrusts the political undercurrent swirling through London's industrial districts, he visibly tenses whenever the word union enters the conversation, his hand moving instinctively to tap the billet of his truncheon. Bradshaw fears that any hint of sabotage or conspiracy could spark the kind of labor unrest that has been simmering throughout the East End. Their unlikely ally emerges in the form of Ned Harrow, Mrs. Hudson's nephew, a delivery boy whose intimate knowledge of the factory district's maze of alleys proves invaluable. Ned navigates by scent, the yeast from the riverside breweries, the tallow from candleworks, the distinctive metallic tang of the steamworks themselves. His network of contacts among the street vendors and night workers provides Holmes with eyes and ears throughout the industrial quarter. The physical evidence begins to accumulate like pieces of a mechanical puzzle. The whistle valve log confirms Greaves' impossible timing, an extra half-second that should not exist. More intriguing are the wet footprints Holmes discovers angled toward the tower ladder, positioned against the prevailing wind in a pattern that suggests deliberate concealment rather than casual approach. Most puzzling of all is the discovery of coal dust in the clerk's office, a room with no connection to the furnaces and no reason to contain the black residue of the boiler house. Time becomes the enemy as word arrives that a comprehensive safety inspection has been scheduled for week's end. If the factory is found wanting, the entire operation could be shut down, burying whatever evidence remains beneath layers of bureaucratic procedure. Holmes realizes that he must solve this puzzle of sound and steel before the machinery of government grinds the truth to dust beneath its wheels. The morning sun struggles through London's perpetual shroud of industrial smoke as Holmes begins his methodical examination of witness testimonies, each account revealing contradictions that defy the laws of physics and human perception. The stoker, Isaac Quell, insists with quiet certainty that the scream came after the second pulse of the midnight whistle, a detail that puzzles Watson until Holmes explains that the Harrogate whistle produces a distinctive double note, the first sharp and piercing, the second a resonant echo that bounces off the factory's brick walls. Miriam Vale, however, maintains with equal conviction that the human cry preceded the whistle's echo, occurring in that brief moment of relative silence between the mechanical blast and its architectural response. Her scarred fingers trace nervous patterns on her safety ledger as she speaks, and Holmes notices how she carefully avoids using the word accident, instead referring to patterns of industrial mishap that follow predictable rhythms of neglect and cost-cutting. The mathematics of sound make it impossible for both witnesses to be correct. Holmes produces his violin and demonstrates how the factory yard's unique acoustic properties create a precise echo delay of 1 3/4 seconds. Standing at different positions throughout the yard, he snaps a violin string and measures the returning sound with Ned's quick footsteps as a metronome. The stoker and safety steward cannot both be telling the truth about when they heard the scream, yet neither appears to be lying. Timekeeper Greaves' nervous habits become more pronounced under scrutiny. When discussing that night's events, he flinches visibly whenever Holmes mentions unauthorized overtime, and his perpetual watch-checking reveals an obsession with precision that borders on compulsion. A search of his desk reveals the source of his mechanical accuracy, a hidden metronome, carefully calibrated to match the whistle's standard duration of 4 3/4 seconds. The technical evidence deepens the mystery rather than resolving it. Holmes discovers traces of castor oil on the whistle's valve lever, an unusual lubricant for steam equipment, which typically uses heavier petroleum products. The oil's presence suggests someone with knowledge of precision instruments, possibly clockwork mechanisms that require lighter lubrication. More disturbing is the discovery of pumice residue around the valve housing, evidence that someone has deliberately obscured tool marks or serial numbers. In Miriam Vale's coat pocket, Holmes finds a creased safety petition bearing what appears to be a tear stain. The paper smells faintly of camphor liniment, a medicinal preparation commonly used for joint pain and muscle strain. The tear mark's position and chemical composition suggest it was applied deliberately rather than naturally, implying that Vale's emotional distress over worker safety might be partially performed for effect. The investigation takes an unexpected turn when Holmes applies his scientific method to the acoustic puzzle. Using segments of violin string as improvised timing devices, he maps the sound propagation patterns throughout the factory complex. Watson marvels at his friend's ability to transform the industrial landscape into a vast musical instrument, each surface and opening contributing to the complex symphony of mechanical noise that defines the Harrogate works. At first, all evidence appears to point toward Miriam Vale as the perpetrator of some elaborate sabotage scheme. Her campaign against night shifts provides motive, her technical knowledge of safety systems grants opportunity, and her emotional investment in worker protection could drive her to extreme measures. The castor oil traces suggest someone familiar with delicate mechanisms, and Vale's background includes training in industrial safety equipment that would encompass such knowledge. Yet Holmes remains unsatisfied with this seemingly obvious conclusion. The oil signature contradicts Vale's known practices. Her maintenance records show exclusive use of standard industrial lubricants, never the lighter oils required for precision work. More tellingly, her burn scars tell a story of someone who has suffered directly from industrial accidents, making sabotage of safety systems psychologically unlikely despite her opposition to dangerous working conditions. The investigation expands to include the factory's administrative structure, revealing a complex web of relationships between management, workers, and the various contractors who service the Harrogate works. Night shift access requires special authorization, logged meticulously in Greaves' timing records, yet someone moved freely through the facility during the crucial period around midnight. Inspector Bradshaw grows increasingly agitated as the investigation proceeds, his concerns about labor unrest mounting with each revelation of potential safety violations or management negligence. The political implications of the case extend far beyond a single factory. London's industrial districts teeter on the edge of widespread labor action, and any evidence of systematic endangerment of workers could provide the spark that ignites a citywide conflagration. Holmes concludes this phase of the investigation with a troubling realization. Someone has orchestrated events with the precision of a master clockmaker, manipulating both mechanical systems and human perception to create an acoustic illusion that masks their true purpose. The extended whistle was not an accident or malfunction, but a carefully calculated deception designed to provide cover for something far more sinister than simple sabotage. The breakthrough arrives not through brilliant deduction, but through the mundane discovery of Lionel Greaves' most carefully guarded secret. While examining the timekeeper's desk for a second time, Holmes notices that the hidden metronome bears fresh scratches around its adjustment mechanism. When he questions Greaves about these marks, the timekeeper's composure finally cracks, revealing a truth that inverts the entire investigation. Greaves confesses that his legendary precision stems not from exceptional hearing or mechanical intuition, but from careful preparation. Each evening before the midnight shift change, he sets his metronome to match the whistle's standard duration, training his ear to recognize the expected 4 3/4 second blast. On the night of the incident, he followed his usual routine, expecting the familiar mechanical rhythm that has governed his professional life for 2 decades. But the whistle betrayed his expectations, extending beyond the metronome's measured beat into that impossible realm of extra sound where someone screamed. Greaves' shock at hearing the extended note was genuine. He had prepared for mechanical precision and instead encountered something that defied the fundamental laws of steam pressure and valve engineering that he had spent 20 years mastering. This revelation forces Holmes to reconsider every assumption about the case. If Greaves' timing was based on expectation rather than measurement, then his logs represent not objective scientific data, but the subjective experience of someone whose understanding of mechanical reality was suddenly shattered. The timekeeper becomes less suspect than victim, his world of predictable precision invaded by an impossible variation that challenges everything he believes about industrial reliability. The investigation of the whistle tower itself yields more disturbing evidence. Holmes discovers that someone has tampered with the relief spring mechanism, replacing the standard component with a modified version designed to extend the valve's closing time by precisely the half-second that Greaves recorded. The replacement part bears no manufacturer's marks, having been filed smooth with pumice to remove any identifying characteristics. This mechanical modification requires sophisticated knowledge of steam engineering and access to precision manufacturing tools. The work is not crude sabotage, but expert craftsmanship designed to create a specific acoustic effect while leaving minimal evidence of tampering. Holmes calculates that the extended whistle provided exactly enough additional sound to mask the movement of someone crossing the factory yard during what should have been the loudest moment of the shift change. The coal dust in the clerk's office now reveals its significance as part of a carefully planned infiltration route. Holmes traces the contamination pattern from the boiler house through a maintenance tunnel that connects to the administrative building. The tunnel, designed for steam pipe access, provides a soot-choked passage that would leave traces of coal residue on anyone who used it to bypass the main factory floor. More crucially, this hidden route emerges near the base of the whistle tower, providing covert access to the mechanism that controls the midnight signal. Someone with detailed knowledge of the factory's infrastructure used this forgotten passage to reach the whistle controls, modify the timing mechanism, and retreat without being observed by the regular shift workers or security personnel. The investigation takes another unexpected turn when Holmes realizes that the modification itself was only temporary. Examination of the tower mechanism shows that the altered spring could be quickly swapped with the original component, leaving no permanent evidence of tampering. This suggests that the perpetrator planned not just the execution of their scheme, but its complete concealment through mechanical restoration. Watson marvels at the sophistication of the plot. Someone had studied the factory's operations long enough to identify the exact moment when extended sound would provide maximum cover for clandestine activity. The whistle modification was not random vandalism, but a precisely calculated tool designed to create an acoustic blind spot in the factory's security arrangements. The timekeeper's metronome becomes a crucial piece of evidence, not as proof of deception, but as demonstration of the perpetrator's intimate knowledge of human psychology. Someone knew that Greaves' timing methods were based on expectation rather than measurement, and they calculated that this would make him the perfect witness to an impossible event that would confuse rather than illuminate the investigation. Holmes begins to suspect that the real crime was not the mechanical tampering itself, but whatever action the extended whistle was designed to conceal. The acoustic manipulation was merely a tool, not an end in itself. Someone needed those extra moments of sound cover to accomplish something in the factory yard that required absolute secrecy and perfect timing. The revelation that mechanical precision can be manipulated shifts the focus from the whistle itself to the human intelligence behind its modification. Holmes now seeks not just a saboteur, but a master planner who understands both the technical and psychological aspects of industrial espionage. The midnight scream was not a cry of terror or pain, but possibly a signal, a distraction, or the unavoidable sound of a plan going slightly awry. The revelation of the whistle's deliberate modification sends shockwaves through the small community of suspects and witnesses, each person's reaction revealing new layers of complicity, fear, and hidden knowledge that reshape Holmes's understanding of the case dynamics. Miriam Vale's response proves most dramatically transformative when Holmes demonstrates how the extended whistle was mechanically engineered. Her righteous anger about safety violations collapses into weary resignation. She admits that she has been fighting a losing battle against systemic negligence for years, watching cost-cutting measures gradually erode worker protections, while management dismisses her warnings as union troublemaking. Her scarred hands shake as she realizes that someone has turned her legitimate safety concerns into cover for criminal activity. Vale's confession reveals that she discovered evidence of after-hours activity in the factory several weeks ago, unusual wear patterns on equipment that should have been idle, traces of unauthorized access to restricted areas, and subtle modifications to safety protocols that she attributed to management interference. Her campaign against night shifts was partially motivated by suspicion that something dangerous was happening during the darkest hours when oversight was minimal and accountability could be easily avoided. Isaac Quell, the soft-spoken stoker, exhibits guilty relief when the focus shifts away from worker sabotage toward more sophisticated criminal enterprise. His nervous breath-counting intensifies as he admits that he has been deliberately avoiding certain areas of the factory floor during night shifts, following warnings from other workers about irregularities that were never officially reported. The brass talisman he carries was actually a gift from another stoker who disappeared mysteriously several months ago, leaving behind only whispered warnings about staying away from the tower area after midnight. Inspector Bradshaw's reaction proves most troubling for the investigation's official standing. His fear of labor unrest transforms into rigid determination to suppress any evidence that might implicate factory management in criminal conspiracy. Bradshaw recognizes that proof of systematic worker endangerment could trigger exactly the kind of industrial uprising that Scotland Yard has been working to prevent throughout London's manufacturing districts. The inspector's political calculations force Holmes to adjust his investigative strategy, conducting interviews and evidence gathering with greater discretion while building a case that can withstand official pressure to minimize findings. Bradshaw's presence becomes both protection and constraint, ensuring legal authority for the investigation while threatening to curtail any discoveries that might prove politically inconvenient. Holmes implements a new interview protocol based on acoustic positioning, rather than chronological sequence. He begins with workers who had elevated vantage points during the night shift: roof maintenance personnel, crane operators, and tower watchmen, who might have observed activity from above the factory floor's visual obstructions. The soft trap Holmes devises proves particularly revealing. He asks each person to hum what they remember of the whistle's pitch from that night, watching carefully as most witnesses strain to reach higher notes than the whistle actually produces. This unconscious vocal reaching indicates that they heard something attempting to match or extend the whistle's natural tone, evidence supporting the theory of acoustic manipulation rather than mechanical malfunction. Isaac Quell's psychological profile emerges as crucial to understanding the timeline of events. His compulsive counting, initially appearing as simple nervous habit, reveals itself as a sophisticated timing mechanism he uses to maintain safety rhythms during dangerous work. Quell's ability to count precise intervals while performing complex manual tasks makes him an exceptionally reliable witness for acoustic timing, but also suggests that his original testimony about when he heard the scream may have been compromised by the psychological disruption of hearing an impossible sound. The investigation reveals that Quell's counting was disrupted that night by the whistle's extended duration, causing him to lose track of his safety rhythm and potentially exposing him to industrial hazards. This psychological impact suggests that the whistle modification was not simply about creating sound cover, but about disrupting the careful timing patterns that keep night shift workers safe in dangerous conditions. Watson observes how the revelation of deliberate tampering transforms the factory itself from neutral industrial space into a crime scene, where every surface and sound carries potential evidence. The maze of pipes, walkways, and machinery that seemed merely functional now appears as an elaborate stage designed for concealment and misdirection. Holmes begins mapping not just the physical geography of the Harrogate Works, but its human geography, the patterns of movement, communication, and authority that govern how information flows through the industrial hierarchy. Understanding who has access to what areas at which times becomes crucial for identifying how someone could orchestrate such sophisticated mechanical deception. The investigation's new direction forces everyone involved to confront the possibility that the Harrogate Works harbors not just industrial accidents or labor disputes, but organized criminal activity that exploits the factory's complex systems for purposes that extend far beyond manufacturing steam-powered machinery. The investigation expands beyond the immediate mystery when Holmes discovers evidence of a sophisticated black market operation centered around the Thames waterfront. Ned Harrow's network of street contacts reveals that small pieces of brass tubing, precisely machined to specific dimensions, have been changing hands through shadowy transactions in the alleys connecting the Harrogate Works to Regent Wharf. These brass components, initially dismissed as common industrial scrap, prove to have been deliberately shaped to function as acoustic devices. Holmes's examination reveals that they could serve as portable reed instruments, designed to produce sustained tones that would blend seamlessly with the factory's mechanical sounds. The implications are staggering. Someone has been manufacturing counterfeit acoustic signatures that could mask unauthorized activity throughout London's industrial district. The brass tube trade connects to a wider network of corruption involving dock workers, factory supervisors, and clerks who control access to supposedly secure facilities after normal working hours. Payment for these transactions flows through a complex system of inflated maintenance contracts and phantom overtime charges that hide significant sums of money within the factory's legitimate operating expenses. Management's threat to temporarily close the whistle tower for routine repairs creates urgent new pressure on the investigation. Holmes realizes that this closure would eliminate crucial physical evidence while providing perfect cover for removing any remaining traces of the mechanical modifications. The timing coincides suspiciously with the scheduled safety inspection, suggesting coordination between the factory's administrative and criminal elements. The bureaucratic obstacle forces Holmes to accelerate his evidence gathering while simultaneously building legal protection for his findings. He must document every crucial detail before official maintenance can obscure the truth, while ensuring that his evidence will survive administrative attempts to minimize or suppress inconvenient discoveries about industrial security vulnerabilities. A new complication emerges when anonymous broadsides begin appearing throughout the factory district, accusing Miriam Vale of theft and equipment tampering. The inflammatory language and timing suggest an orchestrated campaign designed to discredit her testimony while redirecting suspicion toward labor agitators rather than management complicity. Holmes's analysis of the broadside's printing reveals sophisticated misdirection. The ink appears to smear when exposed to steam, initially suggesting production near the boiler house and implicating factory workers in the propaganda campaign. However, closer examination shows that this smearing characteristic is common among street printers throughout London, making it useless as specific evidence while successfully creating false impressions about the source. The red herring demonstrates the perpetrator's psychological sophistication. They understand not only mechanical and acoustic manipulation, but human perception and investigation procedures. Someone anticipated that Holmes would analyze physical evidence and planted misleading clues designed to waste time and misdirect attention toward politically convenient but factually incorrect conclusions. Watson becomes increasingly concerned about the investigation's expanding scope and rising stakes. What began as a puzzle about impossible timing has evolved into a conspiracy that threatens multiple lives and could destabilize London's industrial peace. The Brass Tube Network suggests criminal organization that extends far beyond a single factory incident, with implications for security throughout the Thames manufacturing corridor. The institutional obstacles multiply as various authorities attempt to control or limit the investigation. Factory management cites trade secrets and proprietary processes to restrict access to key areas. Labor representatives demand protection for workers who fear retaliation for cooperation with police. Government officials express concerns about information that could compromise industrial security or economic stability. Holmes must navigate these competing pressures while maintaining the scientific objectivity that makes his methods effective. Each new restriction or demand creates additional challenges for evidence gathering and witness protection, forcing increasingly creative approaches to documentation and verification of crucial facts. The discovery of the brass tube manufacturing operation raises questions about the true scale and purpose of the criminal enterprise. If someone has been mass-producing acoustic deception devices, the Harrogate incident may be only one example of a much larger pattern of industrial espionage or sabotage affecting multiple facilities throughout London. The investigation reveals that the factory's night shift protocols have been gradually modified over several months, creating new vulnerabilities while maintaining the appearance of normal operations. These changes suggest long-term planning by someone with intimate knowledge of both industrial security procedures and the specific weaknesses of the Harrogate works. The psychological pressure on all parties intensifies as the implications become clear. Workers fear for their jobs and safety, management worries about liability and public relations disasters, and law enforcement grapples with potential evidence of organized crime that could require resources far beyond a local investigation. Holmes realizes that solving the acoustic puzzle of the midnight whistle is only the beginning of unraveling a criminal enterprise that exploits the complexity of industrial society to hide systematic theft, espionage, or worse. The extended whistle was not just cover for a single night's activity, but part of an ongoing operation that threatens the security of London's entire manufacturing infrastructure. The human cost of the investigation becomes painfully clear when Miriam Vale requests a private meeting with Holmes, her composure finally cracking under the weight of accumulated fear and moral responsibility. In the dim light of her modest lodging near the factory gates, she reveals the personal stakes that have driven her safety campaign beyond mere professional duty. Vale's confession carries the weight of survivors' guilt and frustrated helplessness. She describes watching fellow workers suffer preventable injuries while management dismissed her safety reports as hysteria or union agitation. Her burn scars, she admits, came not from a single dramatic accident but from repeated exposure to unsafe conditions she was powerless to change, despite her technical knowledge and official authority. The emotional core of Vale's testimony centers on her discovery of systematic safety violations that create deliberate blind spots in factory security. She has documented evidence of disabled warning systems, modified safety protocols that increase rather than reduce hazards, and maintenance schedules designed to create windows of vulnerability rather than ensure equipment reliability. But her position as safety steward makes her simultaneously responsible for worker protection and vulnerable to charges of incompetence or conspiracy. Vale's most devastating revelation concerns her partial knowledge of the criminal conspiracy. She suspected that someone was exploiting safety vulnerabilities for unauthorized access to restricted areas, but her attempts to investigate were blocked by management claims of proprietary security measures. Her campaign against night shifts was partly motivated by evidence that these dangerous periods were being deliberately created and maintained to facilitate criminal activity. The emotional dilemma deepens when Vale reveals that she has been receiving anonymous threats, warning her to stop investigating safety violations. These messages, delivered through her factory mailbox, demonstrate intimate knowledge of her daily routines and living arrangements. Someone has been watching her closely enough to know when she arrives at work, what routes she takes through the factory, and even what she eats for lunch. Holmes faces his own ethical crisis when Vale asks for protection not for herself, but for the families of workers who have provided her with information about suspicious activities. These witnesses fear retaliation not just for their cooperation, but for their knowledge of criminal operations that extend beyond simple theft or sabotage into areas that could threaten their lives and livelihoods. The detective's natural inclination toward objective analysis conflicts with his growing recognition that this case involves real human suffering caused by systematic exploitation of industrial workers' vulnerability. His methodical approach to evidence gathering must balance scientific rigor with the urgent need to protect people whose cooperation makes the investigation possible. Watson observes how the case affects his friend's usually detached demeanor. Holmes's commitment to factual accuracy and logical deduction remains unwavering, but his motivation shifts from intellectual curiosity toward moral obligation. The acoustic puzzle that initially attracted his attention has revealed a pattern of deliberate endangerment that transforms abstract criminal investigation into personal mission. The emotional complexity increases when Holmes discovers archived records of a previous factory death that was officially classified as natural causes, despite evidence suggesting industrial negligence. The victim was a night shift supervisor who had begun asking questions about unauthorized access to restricted areas. His death occurred during a period of mechanical maintenance that coincidentally eliminated physical evidence of safety violations. This historical precedent informs Holmes's growing caution about exposing witnesses to retaliation, while simultaneously reinforcing the necessity of completing the investigation. The archived case demonstrates that the criminal conspiracy has been operating long enough to develop sophisticated methods for eliminating threats to its security, including the capacity to arrange deaths that appear accidental or natural. Vale's request for witness protection forces Holmes to engage with Inspector Bradshaw's political concerns in new ways. The detective must find methods of evidence preservation and witness safety that satisfy legal requirements while avoiding the kind of public exposure that could trigger the labor unrest Bradshaw fears. The investigation becomes a delicate balance between justice and stability. The emotional stakes rise when Holmes realizes that the midnight whistle's timing ritualization serves psychological as well as practical purposes. The predictable industrial rhythm provides workers with a sense of order and safety in dangerous conditions. Tampering with this timing violates not just mechanical systems, but the psychological foundations that help people cope with industrial hazards. The case develops personal meaning for Holmes when he recognizes that his own methods of precise observation and logical deduction mirror the factory workers' reliance on timing and routine for survival. The criminal conspiracy's manipulation of acoustic patterns represents an attack on the fundamental human need for predictable order in chaotic environments. Vale's final emotional appeal challenges Holmes to consider whether his investigation can provide not just intellectual satisfaction, but meaningful protection for the vulnerable people whose labor maintains London's industrial prosperity. The detective must decide whether exposing the truth is worth the potential cost in human suffering if his discoveries trigger violent retaliation or economic disruption that harms innocent workers. The investigation reaches a critical turning point when three seemingly unrelated discoveries converge to reveal the true sophistication of the criminal operation. Holmes's methodical analysis of the whistle mechanism, combined with new evidence from the brass tube network and a shocking development in the case timeline, transforms the mystery from complex puzzle into urgent crisis. The mechanical evidence crystallizes into undeniable proof of deliberate manipulation. Holmes's detailed examination reveals not just the replaced relief spring, but traces of castor oil applied with surgical precision to specific valve components and microscopic scratches indicating the use of a portable metal reed, cut to produce an exact acoustic match for the whistle's extended note. These three elements, working in concert, could create the impossible half-second extension while leaving minimal evidence of tampering. The technical sophistication suggests someone with advanced knowledge of both mechanical engineering and acoustic physics. The castor oil application required understanding of how different lubricants affect valve timing under steam pressure. The reed fabrication demanded precision metalworking skills and acoustic knowledge sufficient to calculate exact tonal matches. The spring replacement needed expertise in steam system engineering and access to specialized manufacturing capabilities. More disturbing than the technical complexity is the discovery that Isaac Quell's brass talisman has vanished from his coat pocket during the investigation. The small tube, which Holmes now recognizes as potentially crucial evidence of the reed manufacturing process, disappeared sometime during the past day while Quell was being interviewed. This theft suggests that someone has been monitoring the investigation's progress and taking active steps to eliminate evidence as it becomes identified. The crisis deepens dramatically when a second midnight whistle sounds during the current night, occurring at 12:47 a.m., nearly an hour off the official schedule maintained by Lionel Greaves' meticulously accurate timing logs. This off-cycle blast proves that someone retains the ability to operate the whistle mechanism independently of the factory's normal steam pressure and timing systems, demonstrating ongoing criminal access to supposedly secure industrial infrastructure. Watson accompanies Holmes to the factory during this unauthorized whistle activation, witnessing firsthand how the acoustic manipulation works in practice. The sound carries the same impossible extension that characterized the original incident, but now Holmes can observe the technique in real time. Through his field glasses, he spots a shadowy figure on the whistle tower catwalk, working with practiced efficiency to attach and remove the portable reed device that creates the extended tone. The timing compression becomes critical when Inspector Bradshaw announces that the promised safety inspection has been rescheduled to occur immediately, tonight rather than at week's end. This acceleration eliminates Holmes's remaining time for gradual evidence gathering and forces him to either present his findings immediately or risk losing access to crucial physical evidence when official investigators seal the tower area. The political implications escalate beyond Bradshaw's initial concerns about labor unrest. The inspector reveals that higher authorities are pressuring him to conclude the investigation quickly with findings that minimize industrial security vulnerabilities. Government officials fear that detailed documentation of factory infiltration methods could provide blueprints for sabotage activities throughout London's manufacturing sector. Holmes realizes that the criminal operation has been designed not just to accomplish specific illegal objectives, but to exploit the political tensions surrounding industrial security. The perpetrators understand that revealing their methods might be considered more dangerous than allowing their activities to continue, creating a perverse incentive for official suppression of evidence rather than prosecution of crimes. The Brass Tube Network investigation yields its most significant discovery when Ned Harrow reports unusual activity near Regent Wharf involving the transport of sealed packages during precisely timed intervals that coincide with factory shift changes. These packages, moved by dock workers who have been paid substantial bonuses for discretionary overtime, suggest that the acoustic manipulation serves to coordinate complex smuggling operations that extend far beyond the Harrogate works. The revelation that the whistle tampering facilitates coordinated criminal activity throughout the Thames Industrial Corridor transforms the case from isolated factory incident into evidence of organized crime that threatens London's economic security. The extended whistle signals may coordinate the movement of stolen goods, contraband materials, or sensitive information through a network of compromised facilities. Watson observes how the escalating stakes affect everyone involved in the investigation. Workers become increasingly fearful of retaliation, management grows more resistant to cooperation, and official authorities show greater concern about containing rather than solving the problem. The truth itself becomes dangerous, threatening to expose vulnerabilities that criminal organizations could exploit more widely. Holmes faces the professional challenge of his career, building an airtight case under severe time constraints while protecting witnesses and evidence from sophisticated criminal countermeasures. The midnight whistle has become a symbol of how industrial society's complexity creates opportunities for criminal exploitation that traditional investigative methods struggle to address effectively. The investigation's climactic phase begins with the recognition that tonight's activities will determine whether justice prevails or criminal organization successfully adapts to investigative pressure by eliminating evidence, witnesses, and the detective himself if necessary. The various threads of the investigation weave together in a pattern that reveals the true scope and purpose of the criminal enterprise centered around the Harrogate works. Holmes's methodical documentation of seemingly separate suspicious activities suddenly crystallizes into evidence of a coordinated operation that exploits London's industrial infrastructure for systematic theft and espionage. The brass tube manufacturing network connects directly to the factory's administrative corruption through a complex financial arrangement that has been hidden in plain sight. Holmes discovers that the scrap metal trade generates inflated invoices that provide cover for substantial cash payments to clerks who control after-hours access to supposedly secure facilities. These payments, disguised as legitimate maintenance contracts and overtime compensation, fund a network of accomplices throughout the Thames industrial corridor. The romantic entanglement that emerges between one of these clerks and a whistle tender provides the emotional motivation that makes the criminal conspiracy possible. Their relationship, initially appearing as simple workplace attraction, actually represents a calculated partnership between someone with administrative access and someone with technical expertise in acoustic manipulation. Together, they possess all the knowledge and authority necessary to orchestrate the complex deception that the investigation has gradually uncovered. This personal connection explains how the criminal operation acquired the intimate knowledge of factory systems and security protocols necessary for such sophisticated planning. The clerk's access to personnel records, maintenance schedules, and security procedures combined with the whistle tender's understanding of mechanical systems and acoustic properties to create the perfect partnership for industrial espionage and theft. Holmes's investigation of the planted red herring about Miriam Vale reveals additional layers of misdirection designed to protect the real perpetrators while exploiting legitimate political tensions surrounding labor relations. The smear campaign against Vale was carefully calculated to redirect suspicion toward union activity rather than management complicity, understanding that authorities would prefer to blame worker agitation rather than confront systematic security failures. The discovery that the problematic ink characteristics were common rather than diagnostic forces Holmes to appreciate the sophistication of the psychological manipulation involved. The perpetrators understood that investigators would analyze physical evidence and planted false clues designed to waste time while creating politically convenient but factually incorrect conclusions about the source of threats to industrial security. Ned Harrow's mapping of scent trails through the factory district provides the final crucial evidence linking the brass tube trade to specific locations where stolen materials have been processed and distributed. His ability to trace the distinctive metallic odors of precision machining leads Holmes to a hidden workshop where acoustic devices have been manufactured using stolen factory equipment during unauthorized after-hours access periods. The workshop reveals the true scale of the operation, not just individual theft from the Harrogate works, but systematic exploitation of multiple industrial facilities throughout London. The criminals have been using their acoustic manipulation techniques to coordinate activities across a network of compromised factories, each contributing stolen materials and equipment to a central distribution operation based near the Thames docks. The precision machining equipment found in the hidden workshop includes tools stolen from the Harrogate works over a period of months, removed piece by piece through the maintenance tunnel that Holmes identified earlier. These thefts were disguised as equipment failures and routine replacements, with the stolen items officially recorded as scrapped or returned for warranty repair. The financial records discovered in the workshop demonstrate that the criminal operation has been generating substantial profits through the sale of stolen industrial materials and equipment to foreign buyers interested in London's manufacturing capabilities. The acoustic coordination system allowed them to time their thefts and shipments to avoid detection while maximizing the value of stolen goods. Holmes realizes that the midnight whistle tampering served multiple purposes beyond simple theft coordination. The extended acoustic signal provided cover for movement between facilities, timing for synchronized criminal activities across multiple locations, and a communication system that could operate openly without arousing suspicion from authorities who expected industrial noise during shift changes. The investigation reveals that several other factories in the Thames corridor have experienced similar impossible acoustic anomalies during recent months, suggesting that the Harrogate incident was only one example of a much larger pattern of criminal exploitation. These facilities have all reported minor equipment irregularities and timing discrepancies that now appear as evidence of systematic infiltration and theft. Watson marvels at how the criminals exploited the very complexity of industrial society that makes London's manufacturing prosperity possible. Their scheme depended on the assumption that no single authority would have sufficient knowledge or jurisdiction to recognize patterns that crossed multiple facilities and administrative boundaries. The romantic subplot between the clerk and whistle tender reveals itself as the emotional vulnerability that makes the entire criminal enterprise possible to unravel. Their personal relationship creates communication patterns and behavioral changes that Holmes can track and predict, providing the key to anticipating their next moves and gathering evidence of their coordination. The convergence of evidence forces Holmes to confront the reality that tonight's activities represent not just the resolution of a single case, but a crucial battle in an ongoing war between criminal organization and the legal authorities responsible for protecting London's industrial security. All threads of the investigation converge as Holmes assembles a complete understanding of the criminal conspiracy that has been operating within London's industrial heart. The detective's methodical analysis reveals not just the identity of the perpetrators, but the elegant simplicity of their method disguised beneath layers of mechanical and psychological complexity. The criminal partnership consists of Marcus Whitmore, the night shift whistle tender whose technical expertise with steam systems provided the mechanical knowledge necessary for acoustic manipulation, and Eleanor Prescott, a senior clerk in the factory's administrative offices whose access to personnel records, security schedules, and financial systems made the broader conspiracy possible. Their romantic relationship provided the emotional foundation for professional collaboration that evolved into systematic criminal enterprise. Holmes demonstrates how their method combined mechanical precision with psychological manipulation to create the perfect industrial crime. Whitmore's modification of the whistle mechanism using the portable reed device and altered relief spring extended the midnight signal by exactly the duration needed to mask coordinated movement throughout the factory complex. The castor oil application ensured smooth operation under steam pressure, while the pumice treatment eliminated identifying marks that could trace the equipment modifications. The timing coordination was crucial to their success. The extended whistle provided acoustic cover during the precise moments when stolen equipment and materials were being moved through the maintenance tunnel system that connects various parts of the Harrogate works. Prescott's administrative access allowed her to schedule legitimate maintenance activities that provided cover for unauthorized access to restricted areas where valuable precision instruments and industrial materials could be systematically removed. Their criminal objective was more sophisticated than simple theft. Holmes reveals that they were stealing specific types of precision manufacturing equipment and technical documentation that would allow foreign competitors to duplicate London's advanced industrial processes. The brass tube manufacturing was only one example of their systematic exploitation of British manufacturing capabilities for international espionage purposes. The acoustic manipulation served multiple strategic purposes beyond immediate theft coordination. The impossible timing anomalies were designed to create confusion and misdirection that would focus investigative attention on mechanical failures or worker sabotage rather than systematic management-level conspiracy. The psychological impact of impossible events was calculated to undermine confidence in witness testimony and physical evidence. Holmes identifies Whitmore's characteristic behavioral tell, a nervous habit of wiping his palms on his trouser seams that leaves distinctive pale streaks of pumice residue from his mechanical work. This physical evidence, combined with the pattern of his access to the whistle tower during crucial time periods, provides undeniable proof of his direct involvement in the acoustic manipulation. The investigation reveals that Prescott's administrative position gave her advanced knowledge of safety inspections, security reviews, and management decisions that allowed the criminal partnership to anticipate and counter official oversight. Her ability to modify personnel schedules and maintenance records provided cover for Whitmore's unauthorized access to restricted systems while creating false documentation that would mislead any subsequent investigation. The broader criminal network extends far beyond the immediate partnership to include dock workers who transport stolen goods, street vendors who provide surveillance and communication services, and corrupt officials who ensure that investigations are limited in scope and urgency. The brass tube trade represents only the visible surface of a criminal organization that exploits London's industrial complexity for systematic economic espionage. Holmes realizes that tonight's off-schedule whistle blast was not random criminal activity, but a desperate attempt to retrieve crucial evidence before the accelerated safety inspection could discover it. The criminals are attempting to recover the original relief spring and eliminate physical proof of mechanical tampering, while simultaneously removing the last of the stolen precision equipment from its hidden storage location within the factory complex. The detective identifies the immediate danger to Miriam Vale, who has become the designated scapegoat for criminal activities that her legitimate safety concerns accidentally threatened to expose. The anonymous broadside campaign was designed to establish her as a plausible suspect for sabotage activities, while her elimination would remove the most knowledgeable witness to the pattern of safety violations that provided cover for criminal access. Watson understands that the case has reached its critical point. All evidence points to specific perpetrators using identified methods for documented criminal purposes, but the criminals remain actively dangerous and capable of eliminating witnesses or evidence that threatens their operation. The political pressures surrounding the investigation create additional urgency, as official desires to minimize public exposure of industrial security vulnerabilities could result in suppression rather than prosecution of the criminal conspiracy. Holmes prepares for the final confrontation with the recognition that success requires not just intellectual understanding of the criminal method, but practical preparation for physical danger and political resistance. The criminals have demonstrated sophisticated planning, technical expertise, and willingness to eliminate threats to their operation. Tonight's activities will determine whether justice prevails or criminal organization successfully adapts to investigative pressure through violence or official suppression of inconvenient evidence. The stage is set for a climactic confrontation that will test not just Holmes's deductive abilities, but his courage and resourcefulness in the face of organized criminal resistance backed by official pressure to avoid embarrassing revelations about industrial security failures. Holmes orchestrates the final phase of his investigation with the precision of a military campaign, understanding that success requires perfect coordination of evidence gathering, witness protection, and tactical positioning to overcome both criminal resistance and official obstruction. The detective transforms the Harrogate works into a controlled battlefield, where scientific method meets organized crime in direct confrontation. The trap execution exploits the very environmental factors that the criminals have been using to their advantage. Holmes positions himself in the shadow of the Whistle Tower catwalk, using the factory's complex acoustic properties to monitor approaching footsteps while remaining concealed from observation. The thick Thames fog that has provided cover for criminal activities now serves to mask the detective's presence during the crucial moments of evidence gathering. Watson takes position near the maintenance tunnel entrance, equipped with a photographer's flash apparatus to document any attempt to move stolen equipment through the hidden passage system. His medical training provides steady hands and scientific objectivity necessary for creating undeniable photographic evidence of criminal activity in progress, while his military experience ensures reliable performance under pressure. Inspector Bradshaw, despite his political concerns about labor unrest, agrees to position uniformed officers at strategic points around the factory perimeter. His cooperation stems from Holmes's demonstration that the criminal conspiracy threatens government security interests more than worker demonstrations ever could. The detective's evidence of industrial espionage and foreign involvement transforms the case from local labor dispute into matter of national security. Ned Harrow coordinates surveillance through his network of street contacts, creating an invisible web of observation that monitors all approaches to the factory complex. His intimate knowledge of the district's alley systems and informal communication networks provides early warning of any criminal countermeasures or attempts to escape through routes that official authorities might overlook. The environmental leverage proves crucial as Holmes manipulates the factory's acoustic properties to create confusion and misdirection among the criminals. Using segments of violin string attached to various metal structures, he creates subtle vibration patterns that suggest investigative activity in areas where no one is actually present, forcing the criminals to reveal their positions while attempting to avoid detection. Holmes's request for a timing test provides the perfect bait to draw Marcus Whitmore into position on the Whistle Tower catwalk. The detective's message, delivered through official factory channels, claims that Inspector Bradshaw requires a demonstration of normal whistle operation to complete his incident report. This request appears routine enough to avoid suspicion while providing legitimate reason for Whitmore to access the tower mechanism during the critical period. The psychological pressure builds as Whitmore realizes that his technical expertise has trapped him in a position where refusing cooperation would raise suspicion, while complying provides Holmes with the opportunity to observe criminal methods in action. The whistle tender's professional pride in his mechanical knowledge conflicts with his criminal instincts for self-preservation, creating emotional vulnerability that the detective exploits ruthlessly. Eleanor Prescott's role in the confrontation reveals itself when Holmes discovers that she has been monitoring official communications to anticipate investigative activities. Her administrative access allowed her to intercept the timing test request and coordinate criminal response, but also provided Holmes with evidence of her complicity when he deliberately included false information designed to trace unauthorized access to official correspondence. The criminal countermeasures demonstrate sophisticated preparation for exactly this type of investigation. Whitmore has prepared alternative escape routes through the factory's ventilation systems, while Prescott has arranged for disposal of incriminating documents through a network of accomplices positioned throughout the administrative offices. Their coordination reveals the depth of criminal penetration into supposedly secure industrial operations. Holmes's improvisation becomes necessary when an unexpected gust of wind disrupts the acoustic manipulation that forms the foundation of the trap. The detective adapts by using his violin string technique to create alternative sound signatures that continue to mask his position while providing new ways to track criminal movement through the factory's complex acoustic landscape. Watson marvels at his friend's ability to transform scientific observation into tactical advantage, using the same methodical analysis that solves intellectual puzzles to anticipate and counter criminal resistance. The detective's understanding of human psychology proves as valuable as his knowledge of mechanical systems in predicting how the criminals will respond to investigative pressure. The confrontation builds toward its climax, as all parties converge on the Whistle Tower area during the critical period when stolen equipment must be removed before the morning safety inspection. The criminals' desperate need to eliminate evidence conflicts with their desire to avoid direct confrontation with law enforcement, creating the exact conditions where Holmes can gather undeniable proof of criminal activity while minimizing physical danger to witnesses and investigators. The final preparations require split-second timing, as Holmes coordinates the movements of his allies while anticipating criminal countermeasures designed to eliminate evidence and escape capture. The detective realizes that success depends not just on intellectual superiority, but on courage and determination to see justice accomplished, despite organized resistance and official pressure to suppress embarrassing revelations about industrial security vulnerabilities. The climactic confrontation unfolds in the shadowy industrial landscape of the Harrogate Works, as Holmes's carefully orchestrated trap springs into action, catching the criminals in the act of their most desperate attempt to eliminate evidence and escape justice. The Whistle Tower becomes the focal point of a deadly game where scientific deduction meets criminal desperation in the fog-shrouded darkness of London's industrial heart. Marcus Whitmore ascends the catwalk with practiced stealth, unaware that Holmes observes every movement from his concealed position among the tower's iron supports. The whistle tender carries the portable reed device and a small canvas bag containing tools necessary for removing the modified relief spring, evidence that would conclusively prove the mechanical tampering that made the acoustic deception possible. The detective watches as Whitmore begins the delicate process of installing the reed device, while simultaneously accessing the valve mechanism to retrieve the altered spring component. The criminal's technical expertise is evident in his efficient movements, but his nervous tension reveals itself through the characteristic palm-wiping gesture that leaves telltale pumice streaks on his work clothes. Eleanor Prescott's coordination becomes visible as she signals from the administrative building, using a precisely timed pattern of light flickers designed to inform Whitmore of security patrol movements and provide warning of any investigative interference. Her position at the clerk's office window provides perfect vantage for observing the factory yard, while maintaining plausible cover for legitimate after-hours administrative work. The critical moment arrives when Holmes realizes that the criminals have anticipated potential investigation and prepared a horrifying contingency plan. If captured, they intend to trigger a catastrophic steam explosion that would destroy not only physical evidence but also eliminate witnesses and investigators. Prescott's administrative access includes knowledge of boiler system vulnerabilities that could be exploited to create an accident, devastating enough to end all inquiry into their activities. Watson's position near the maintenance tunnel reveals the scope of the criminal operation's final phase. A steady stream of accomplices moves stolen precision equipment through the hidden passage system, racing to remove the last evidence before morning inspection seals the facility. The stolen goods represent months of systematic theft that has stripped the Harrogate Works of its most valuable manufacturing capabilities. The tension escalates when an unexpected gust of Thames wind catches the portable read device, creating a discordant note that threatens to alert factory security to unauthorized activity on the whistle tower. Whitmore struggles to maintain control of the acoustic manipulation while continuing his frantic efforts to remove the modified spring before Holmes can document its existence. Holmes adapts brilliantly to the crisis by using his violin string technique to create a rhythmic vibration pattern along the tower's metal framework. This improvised percussion system masks the sound of the malfunctioning reed while simultaneously creating a subtle acoustic signature that allows Watson and Inspector Bradshaw to track criminal movement through the complex industrial environment. The psychological pressure reaches breaking point as Prescott realizes that her communication signals are being observed and documented by Ned Harrow's street surveillance network. Her desperate attempts to warn Whitmore of investigative presence create additional evidence of coordination, while revealing the full extent of the criminal partnership's operational sophistication. The climactic freeze-frame moment occurs as Whitmore's hands close around the safe key hidden beneath the whistle mechanism's bell housing. Holmes recognizes that this safe contains not just stolen payroll vouchers, but detailed technical documentation that represents the true objective of the entire criminal conspiracy. Industrial secrets worth far more than simple theft could provide. The detective's realization transforms the confrontation from crime prevention into industrial espionage interdiction. The criminals are not merely stealing equipment and materials, but systematically documenting London's advanced manufacturing processes for foreign competitors who seek to duplicate British industrial capabilities. The acoustic manipulation was designed to facilitate this systematic intelligence-gathering operation. Watson observes the deadly ballet of movement as all parties converge on the tower area during the moment of maximum vulnerability. Holmes must gather conclusive evidence while avoiding the catastrophic explosion that Prescott could trigger if she realizes that escape is impossible. The criminals' preparation for this contingency demonstrates the sophistication of their planning and their willingness to commit mass murder to protect their operation. The environmental factors become crucial as fog density and wind patterns affect both visibility and sound transmission throughout the factory complex. Holmes exploits these natural conditions to maintain tactical advantage while ensuring that his allies can coordinate their movements without alerting the criminals to the true scope of investigative preparation. The maximum tension peaks as the whistle continues its extended keen, providing acoustic cover for the final confrontation between criminal desperation and scientific justice. Every sound, movement, and shadow becomes crucial evidence in the deadly chess game that will determine whether organized crime can successfully exploit London's industrial infrastructure or whether the forces of law and order can protect the foundations of British manufacturing prosperity. The moment of truth approaches as all participants realize that the next few seconds will determine not just the outcome of this specific case, but the broader question of whether criminal organization can successfully adapt to investigative pressure or whether justice will prevail, despite organized resistance and official obstruction. The moment of absolute revelation arrives as Holmes springs his trap with scientific precision, catching Marcus Whitmore in flagrante delicto with the stolen safe key in his hand and the portable read device still attached to the whistle mechanism. The detective emerges from the shadows of the tower supports like an avenging spirit of justice, his keen gray eyes reflecting the gaslight as he documents every detail of the criminal operation in its final, desperate phase. Watson's photographic flash explodes in the darkness below, permanently recording the stream of accomplices moving stolen precision equipment through the maintenance tunnel. The sudden illumination freezes the criminals like insects in amber, their guilt written across their startled faces, as they realize that their carefully planned operation has been completely penetrated and documented by investigative forces they never suspected were present. Inspector Bradshaw's whistle cuts through the extended keen of the factory signal, summoning uniformed officers from their concealed positions around the factory perimeter. The coordination demonstrates that Holmes has transformed local criminal investigation into comprehensive law enforcement operation, ensuring that no element of the conspiracy can escape through prepared alternate routes or contingency plans. The physical evidence crystallizes into undeniable proof of criminal guilt as Holmes displays the portable reed device, still vibrating in harmony with the whistle's extended note, the modified relief spring clutched in Whitmore's trembling hand, and the distinctive pumice residue that marks the criminal's palms with mineral evidence of mechanical tampering. The acoustic deception stands revealed in all its technical sophistication, no longer mysterious but simply criminal. Eleanor Prescott's attempt to trigger the catastrophic steam explosion fails when Holmes demonstrates that he anticipated this contingency by having Inspector Bradshaw's engineers safely isolate the boiler systems hours earlier. The detective's understanding of both criminal psychology and industrial engineering enabled him to neutralize the most dangerous element of the conspiracy while maintaining the operational appearance necessary for his trap to succeed. The logical chain of evidence unfolds with mathematical precision as Holmes explains how the extended whistle provided exactly the acoustic cover necessary for coordinated theft and espionage throughout the Thames Industrial Corridor. The half-second timing extension was calculated to mask footsteps, equipment movement, and communication signals during the critical periods when stolen materials were transported through hidden passage systems. Whitmore's fatal flaw reveals itself through his obsessive pride in achieving perfect timing for the acoustic manipulation. His need to demonstrate technical mastery led him to maintain detailed records of valve adjustments and steam pressure calculations that provide conclusive proof of deliberate mechanical modification. The very precision that made the criminal deception possible becomes the evidence that ensures conviction. The environmental chess game reaches its conclusion as Holmes uses the catwalk's structural vibrations, the fog's acoustic properties, and the whistle's steam pressure to pinpoint every criminal position with scientific accuracy. The factory itself becomes a vast analytical instrument that reveals criminal activity through sound, movement, and mechanical response patterns that only the greatest detective mind could interpret correctly. The broader criminal conspiracy unravels as Prescott's administrative records reveal the full scope of industrial espionage that threatened British manufacturing security. Her detailed documentation of stolen technical processes, equipment specifications, and production methods represents systematic intelligence gathering that could have crippled London's competitive advantages in precision manufacturing and steam engineering. Watson marvels at how the solution encompasses not just criminal identification, but complete understanding of method, motive, and consequence that transforms mysterious events into logical sequence of cause and effect. The impossible acoustic timing becomes simple mechanical manipulation. The inexplicable human scream becomes coordinated criminal signal, and the supernatural mystery becomes mundane criminal conspiracy, exposed through scientific analysis. The human cost of the criminal operation becomes clear, as Holmes reveals how the conspiracy exploited legitimate worker safety concerns to create cover for systematic theft and espionage. Miriam Vale's genuine efforts to protect worker welfare were manipulated to misdirect attention, while criminals used safety violations as access opportunities for their intelligence-gathering activities. The emotional delivery encompasses not just criminal conviction, but restoration of human dignity for the workers whose legitimate concerns were exploited by criminal conspiracy. Vale's burn scars become testimony rather than stigma. Quell's nervous habits become reliable witness rather than suspicious behavior, and Greaves' timing obsession becomes crucial evidence rather than professional inadequacy. The climactic resolution demonstrates that criminal sophistication ultimately cannot overcome scientific method combined with moral determination. Holmes's victory represents not just intellectual triumph, but vindication of rational analysis and ethical commitment in the face of organized criminal resistance, and official pressure to suppress inconvenient truths about industrial security vulnerabilities. The whistle finally falls silent as the modified mechanism is permanently disabled, ending the acoustic deception that enabled months of criminal exploitation. The return to natural industrial rhythms symbolizes the restoration of legitimate order to the Harrogate Works and the broader Thames manufacturing district that criminal conspiracy threatened to compromise through systematic espionage and theft. The detective stands triumphant amid the captured criminals and recovered evidence, having proved once again that no criminal conspiracy, however sophisticated, can ultimately prevail against the combination of scientific observation, logical deduction, and unwavering commitment to justice that defines his investigative method. The dawn light filters through London's industrial haze as the legal consequences of Holmes's investigation begin to reshape the landscape of factory security and worker protection throughout the Thames manufacturing corridor. Marcus Whitmore and Eleanor Prescott face charges of industrial espionage, theft of government property, and conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism, accusations that carry potential sentences of transportation or execution given the national security implications of their systematic intelligence-gathering operation. The broader criminal network unravels as Inspector Bradshaw's expanded investigation reveals the full scope of foreign infiltration into British industrial operations. The brass tube manufacturing operation was merely one component of a sophisticated espionage ring that had been systematically documenting advanced manufacturing techniques for transmission to competing nations seeking to undermine London's economic dominance in precision engineering and steam technology. The social consequences prove equally significant as factory management implements comprehensive security reforms designed to prevent future exploitation of industrial facilities for criminal purposes. Night shift protocols receive complete revision with new safety measures that simultaneously protect worker welfare and prevent unauthorized access to sensitive areas where valuable equipment and technical documentation could be systematically removed. The institutional changes extend beyond the Harrogate Works to influence government policy regarding industrial security throughout London's manufacturing districts. Holmes's documentation of how criminals exploited the complexity of industrial operations leads to new coordination procedures between factory management, law enforcement, and government security agencies responsible for protecting British technological advantages. Miriam Vale's vindication transforms her from suspected saboteur into recognized expert on industrial security vulnerabilities. Her burn scars become symbols of dedication rather than evidence of incompetence, and her appointment as district safety coordinator provides her with the authority necessary to implement the systematic reforms she has advocated throughout her professional career. Isaac Quell receives recognition for his crucial witness testimony and his role in exposing the criminal conspiracy that threatened worker safety throughout the night shift operations. His nervous habits, initially perceived as suspicious behavior, are now understood as the psychological mechanisms that helped him maintain precise timing awareness in dangerous industrial conditions. Lionel Greaves' obsessive precision finds new purpose as he becomes the official timekeeper for coordinated security operations throughout the Thames industrial corridor. His metronome-assisted timing methods, revealed during the investigation, are adapted to create new standards for acoustic monitoring that can detect unauthorized mechanical modifications before they can be exploited for criminal purposes. The technological implications reshape industrial design philosophy as engineers develop new approaches to factory security that balance operational efficiency with protection against sophisticated criminal infiltration. The acoustic manipulation techniques revealed by Holmes's investigation lead to innovations in sound-based security monitoring that become standard features in sensitive manufacturing facilities. Ned Harrow's street surveillance network evolves into an official information gathering system that provides law enforcement with early warning of criminal activities throughout London's complex industrial infrastructure. His unique ability to navigate by scent and coordinate informal communication networks proves invaluable for preventing future exploitation of the district's maze-like geography. The brass talisman that Isaac Quell carried returns as sealed evidence in the criminal trial, but its symbolic significance extends beyond legal proceedings. The small piece of precision-machined metal becomes a reminder of how individual objects can carry meaning that transcends their immediate practical function, representing both criminal sophistication and the human connections that make detection and justice possible. Inspector Bradshaw's concerns about labor unrest prove unfounded, as workers throughout the district express relief that genuine criminal conspiracy has been exposed and eliminated. The investigation's revelation that management-level corruption, rather than worker agitation, created security vulnerabilities helps restore trust between labor and authority, while establishing new cooperative approaches to industrial security. The international implications continue to develop as diplomatic pressure mounts on nations that were receiving stolen British industrial intelligence through the espionage network. Holmes's documentation provides evidence for formal protests and economic sanctions designed to protect British manufacturing advantages from systematic foreign infiltration. Watson reflects on how the case demonstrated the evolution of criminal methods in response to industrial society's increasing complexity. Traditional investigative approaches required adaptation to address crimes that exploited technological sophistication and institutional vulnerabilities in ways that previous generations of criminals could never have imagined. The personal journey of the investigation's conclusion reveals how each character finds their place in the transformed landscape of London's industrial quarter. Holmes returns to Baker Street with the satisfaction that comes not merely from intellectual triumph, but from knowing that his scientific methods have protected innocent lives and preserved British industrial security against foreign exploitation. The legacy of the Midnight Whistle case extends far beyond the specific criminal conspiracy it exposed. Holmes's demonstration that acoustic analysis could reveal sophisticated industrial crimes establishes new investigative techniques that Scotland Yard adopts for monitoring factory security throughout the Empire's manufacturing centers. The precision timing methods he developed become standard tools for detecting mechanical tampering in sensitive industrial facilities. Watson documents the case with particular attention to how modern criminal methods require evolutionary approaches to detection and prevention. His medical perspective proves invaluable in understanding how industrial working conditions create psychological vulnerabilities that sophisticated criminals can exploit, leading to new approaches in worker protection that address both physical safety and security awareness. The Harrogate Works itself undergoes fundamental transformation, becoming a model facility for industrial security that balances operational efficiency with comprehensive protection against infiltration and espionage. The whistle system receives complete redesign, incorporating Holmes's acoustic analysis to create tamper-evident timing mechanisms that cannot be modified without immediate detection. The economic implications ripple through London's manufacturing sector as other facilities implement security reforms based on lessons learned from the criminal conspiracy. The brass tube manufacturing techniques revealed during the investigation lead to new authentication methods for precision components, making it far more difficult for criminal organizations to exploit legitimate industrial operations for systematic theft and intelligence gathering. The human relationships forged during the investigation continue to evolve in the months following the criminal's capture and trial. Miriam Vale's friendship with Isaac Quell develops into a professional partnership focused on worker safety advocacy that extends throughout the Thames industrial corridor. Their shared experience of being initially suspected, then vindicated, creates a bond of mutual understanding that proves invaluable in their collaborative efforts. Lionel Grieve discovers that his obsessive precision serves broader purposes beyond simple timekeeping, as he becomes instrumental in developing new standards for industrial security monitoring. His metronomic methods influence the design of automated detection systems that can identify unauthorized modifications to critical machinery before they can be exploited for criminal purposes. The political consequences prove surprisingly positive, as the investigation's success demonstrates that proper law enforcement cooperation can address industrial security threats without triggering the labor unrest that Inspector Bradshaw initially feared. The revelation that management-level corruption rather than worker agitation created security vulnerabilities helps establish new collaborative relationships between authorities and legitimate labor organizations. Ned Harrow's unique talents find formal recognition as he receives appointment as a specialized investigator for industrial district security. His ability to navigate by scent and coordinate informal surveillance networks becomes part of an official early warning system that helps prevent future criminal exploitation of London's complex urban industrial landscape. The scientific methods Holmes employed during the investigation influence broader approaches to industrial analysis and security assessment. His techniques for acoustic monitoring, timing analysis, and mechanical examination become standard components of factory security protocols, helping to protect British manufacturing advantages against systematic foreign intelligence gathering. The international ramifications continue to develop as the diplomatic protests based on Holmes's evidence lead to formal agreements limiting industrial espionage activities between nations. The case becomes a precedent for how sophisticated criminal conspiracy can threaten national economic interests, leading to new international cooperation in protecting industrial security. The midnight whistle itself, restored to its original mechanical precision, continues to mark the changing of shifts at the Harrogate Works. But now its sound carries additional meaning, a symbol of how vigilance and scientific analysis can protect the foundations of industrial society against those who would exploit its complexity for criminal purposes. Holmes stands at his Baker Street window on subsequent evenings, still timing the distant whistle with his pocket watch, but now with the satisfaction of knowing that the sound represents honest labor protected by effective security, rather than criminal conspiracy, masked by acoustic deception. The game, as always, continues, but justice has prevailed in this crucial battle between scientific detection and organized crime. The case of the impossible whistle timing becomes one of Holmes's most celebrated investigations, demonstrating how the greatest detective mind of the age adapted traditional deductive methods to address the sophisticated criminal challenges posed by London's increasingly complex industrial society. In solving the mystery of the extended midnight whistle, Holmes proved once again that no criminal conspiracy, however ingenious, can ultimately prevail against the combination of scientific observation, logical analysis, and unwavering commitment to justice.